everybody, everybody, man, it's Anthony Brompton. I'm coming at you smoothly, smoother, with a nice guy. And I'm excited to have this gentleman on the show. He and I have never met. We're both in Detroit. But maybe somehow people hear about me because he's invited me to a number of functions. And I've gone, but I just didn't meet this guy. And so here we are on Strong Inspiration. So I'm telling you, I'm jamming through the people who come on the show. You're going to really like this guy. You're going to feel his compassion. He's you'll see what I'm saying, everybody, as we go through, as we make this happen. So hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. It's free. I don't ask no information. It just lets me know you like me. And I know you do because of the people that come on. And maybe you like me too. However, but I'm here to help you, my friends, to get this good history from around the world. Hit the like button on this video. You're going to like it a lot. Hit the notifications bell so you get a ding, a shock, a smoke signal, your lights flicker, your horn on your car goes off, something to let you know there's new content. Did you see the one I did with the guy who found out that his great-great-grandfather was the largest enslaver in Barbados? Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the guy who was accused of being a freedom rider and got put in jail at the age of 13? He ain't know nothing about it. Well, he knew about it, but he wasn't no freedom rider. Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the guy who talks about the history of black business in the Caribbean and how his parents and how his great-great-grandfather bought the land and now he owns it, and now it's a tourist destination on the island of St. John? Watch that video. I got one more. Did you see the one I did with the guy out of Hawaii? And he talks about how Hawaii became Hawaii and a U.S. territory and the Black history in Hawaii. Watch that video. And they're coming from all over. And the guy on the show today, he's going to talk about a couple icons in my town. I knew both of them, one a little bit more than the other because of the timeline, but I idolized them. I'd heard of what they had done in the local community, the state community, and nationally. And so I'm super excited. A couple housekeeping notes. You all might know I'm a filmmaker. This is my documentary. It's Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. I ain't playing with you, my friends. I'm giving you this information, and now it's in film, and it's streaming on Amazon. I took it one step further, and I wrote the book, Black Business Book. And I go back to the 1800s, and Madam C.J. Walker was not the first Black millionaire. Other people that come before her, and some women that come before her, and I talk about them in this book. Get you a copy of the book. It's available on my website, businessintheblack.net, which is where you want to be when you're in business now. That's the one thing. You want to be in the black because in the red is not good. You're losing money. And I'm speaking around the country. I'm on my way to New York City. I'm speaking in Harlem in April. And then from there, I'm in Philadelphia. And then I'm having a little festival in conjunction, not little, hopefully big, in conjunction with the museum in Mount Bayou, Mississippi. That's in July. And then I'm in on Martha's Vineyard in August. I'm at D.C. and, oh, man, I got places. I'm telling you this information. I want you to know it. Now, you hear me use this word strong. Oh, let me say that before I say the strong word. Businessintheblack.net is the website. Go there. Support the cause. Now, you hear me use this word strong a lot. Strong is my favorite word. In my world, strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to the strong man on the show today. Come on, let's get it on. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Anthony. That's a wonderful introduction. I appreciate that.
Tell us your name.
So, I'm Peter Hammer. I teach law at Wayne State University Law School in Detroit, Michigan, and I have the honor of directing the Damon Keith Center for Civil Rights.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so we're gonna get into the story, but as I told you a little bit before, I wanted my guests to get to know you. Where were you born and raised?
So was born in Eastern Washington in Spokane. Went to Gonzaga University that nobody ever heard of until they had a good basketball team. Came out to Michigan to do my PhD in economics and my law degree, and then stayed in the area.
Oh, really? Okay, I got to ask you this. What is your town like? You say Spokane, right? What's
Spokane.
that like? I never heard of
Uh,
it. What's the dynamic to the town?
Fairly conservative, agricultural Eastern Washington. And my joke at people understand in Detroit is it's wider than Livonia.
Oh, really? Okay. That leads to the next question. Did you know black people growing up in any respect?
Uh, there was not a large black community, but I had some very good black friends in high school and in college.
Why? Why did you have them? I mean, how did that
Uh,
come about? You know
yeah,
what I'm
that's
asking
fair.
you?
One was on the debate team with me, and we just got to know each other and had a lot in common. Just a wonderful person.
Okay, I'm gonna stay on that just a tad. Then I got to ask
Gotcha,
you,
gotcha.
how did you become? Let's call it sympathetic, because you could have grown up and not wanted to be around that person or any others, and heard the story, saw the media reports, so on and so forth. What? Why didn't you? Or why
Yeah,
did
I
you?
mean, there's some psychologies to talk about different personality types, and sort of contrasting two. One personality type just wants everything to be the same as it's always been, right? You have your favorite food, you have your favorite restaurant, you have your favorite neighborhood. There's another personality type that is very interested in just new things and differences, right? And is curious. And I've always just been curious about other people, about other countries, about other kinds of food, about other kinds of books, and that's just been since a little kid. Just always just wanting to learn new things, see new things, meet new people.
What was your parents? What was their take on it? Did they?
Yeah.
If I may ask, you tell us how
Yeah,
much
no,
you
no,
want
and
to.
it's I've been thinking a lot about that because my mother just recently passed.
Oh, okay.
But
My condolences.
what an influence she was. So one of my first memories as a child, and my mother's a polio survivor, but she was blessed to be able to walk. So I mean, it was did a lot of muscle damage, but she could still be mobile. But she was taking three kids around the neighborhood collecting for March of Dimes. And that's, as I said, one of my first memories is being towed around for doing that. And she was the chairperson of Spokane's Peace and Justice Center that was at that point protesting the Vietnam War, but then moving into nuclear disarmament in the sort of 1980s. And she was a school social worker, spent most of her career dealing with they call it the BI room, the behavioral intervention room, but dealing with some of the folks that are having some of the most struggles in school. So very much influenced by her.
Could you had okay, let me take it another way. Did the other white kids did they wonder why you did what you did though? Why you befriended the black kids?
I
Did you
don't
get
think
any
so.
pushback?
No, I not me personally. I mean, um, it was when you have a small number, I think it's different than when you have larger numbers, right? Because it's sort of a curiosity, and you're the
Okay,
exception.
okay,
I'm
okay.
just about the psychology of folks.
Yeah, sure, sure.
But no, I've not been exposed to a lot of overt racism. Right.
Okay,
I think the way it operates more in a lot of white communities is kind of the whispering, and it's not a lot of racists are just cowards, right? So they wouldn't go up and do something to somebody's face, but they'll say a whole lot of trash behind
yeah.
somebody's back.
Oh, sure.
So I've been exposed more to that kind of racism growing up than overt types of racism.
Where did the black people live in Spokane?
Yeah, I ironically in the same neighborhood that my father was born and raised. So, but it was very much. It was down by the freeway. It wasn't a freeway then, because they got, just as in Detroit, freeways get put through the disadvantaged neighborhoods.
Uh-huh.
Poor neighborhood that was partially integrated. A lot of poor white folks as well as poor black folks living down on
Did it have a
they call
name?
it the Lower East Side.
Okay. And how far were you from that growing up?
We still went to that church. So my father went to church, and we would
Oh, is
always
that
go to that
right?
neighborhood. Raised Catholic, but probably about 5 miles away, and but that was our family church. So when I was growing up, that was the church we went to in the neighborhood that we got to know fairly well.
What was the one couple more on this? What was the employer for black people? Because like, why did they move to that town out of
Yeah.
wherever else? Yeah.
I don't have an answer to that. I don't think there was a single employer. But the Great Migration hit all parts of the country, although in greater numbers someplace than elsewhere. But being in the Northwest, there was also a long history of Chinese and Asian migration in there, but always hyper minorities. But there was a history of Asian people living in Spokane and Black folks living in Spokane, and obviously even a more substantial Native American presence.
When you lived there, was there any strife among the black community? Did they have, as you remember growing up, protests or anything like that?
Yeah, so
Any particular issues or something?
there was a very prominent black civil rights attorney, Carl Maxey, and he was always causing good trouble, as John Lewis would say.
Okay.
And there are fights everywhere. And there was a fairly active chapter of the NAACP, and I'm blanking on the gentleman's name, but he was HUD secretary under Obama. Grew up in that neighborhood,
Oh,
and went
really?
on and obviously did amazing things. But he was sharing with me stories about his parents being involved in the NAACP when he was growing up.
So, what? How did you talked about coming to Michigan for education? Why Michigan? I mean, you on the other side of the country. Personally, how did that happen?
There's some good schools around here, so that's one
Yeah.
thing. And then I did a joint program in law and economics, and it freed up a whole bunch of scholarship money. So at the end of the day, it was the best deal I had. So
Okay.
cashed it in.
Was there trepidation to come to Detroit? Because I suspect when you got here, Detroit was not on the high end like it is now,
Yeah.
and people wondered, "Hey, man, you got to be careful going into that city, whatever, whatever."
No, as an undergraduate, I was also on the debate team at Gonzaga, and just by ironies of where our coach went to do graduate school, we always had a good relationship with Wayne State. So my coach was
Okay.
a Wayne State grad, and even in college before I moved out to Michigan, just had some very strong relationships with the Wayne State debate team.
What did people tell you about Detroit before you got here?
Well, I mean,
Any
people have been
stories?
talking trash about Detroit, unfortunately, for a long time. So
Yeah,
that was, I think, the label then was the sort of murder capital
yeah.
of the world, and the people mover was called the mugger mover, and but talking trash about Detroit is a long and very sad history.
Um, so were you afraid though in any regards? Did you come here and say, "I can handle this. I'm gonna
No,
make this is gonna be all right for me"?
no. I mean, you just make friends, you meet people, and you
Yeah,
find some
yeah.
of the best people in the world live in Detroit.
So you have a PhD and a law degree?
Yeah, I'm doubly blessed or doubly cursed.
Is there a title for that? Is there something that they call people with that?
They're maybe just silly or stupid, but glutton for punishment, I think, is the title.
Because there are people I've heard, and that's the first time I've heard of that. They who have medical degrees. They have medical doctors and
Yep,
lawyers.
yep.
And so, if I may ask, how do you do that? You went to undergrad, grad, got your doctorate, and then kept going right through, and then went to law school,
Yeah, so I
something like that.
went to undergrad at Gonzaga, came out to Michigan for law and graduate school. First year was in law school, second year was in first year graduate school, third and fourth and fifth year were just sort of mixing up the curriculum and just try to get as many classes in and make as much progress as you could. Graduated and then went clerked on the Ninth Circuit out in Los Angeles for a year. Came back and finished my dissertation, and hang around and teach.
So you like to read?
to read.
That's what, and that's the moral of the story. People, if you read, school kind of comes easy.
Yeah, no, there's all types of different knowledge and all types of different learners. But I was lucky enough to like to read, and I did well in a school environment, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoy teaching. I love teaching, so I love being back in a teaching environment and sharing that knowledge with the next generations.
Now, there are a couple of people that we're going to go into the story. Is Damon Keith and who else, right?
George Crockett Jr.
Okay. How did you meet? Who did you meet first, and how did you meet?
Yeah. So I never met Judge Crockett. He had passed before we started the process. But my
Right.
co-author for that book was Ed Littlejohn. And Ed Littlejohn knew Judge Crockett, was actually doing a lot of interviews of him when he was still alive. And so Ed was the main contact interpersonally with Judge Crockett. I first met Judge Keith when we were building the Key Center.
Okay.
So we were starting that, and through that, got to know him and work with him and be mentored by him for more than a decade, which was just an amazing, amazing honor.
Let's go back to the first one. So people who are not here who don't know who was George Crockett. What's his story?
Yeah, probably the one of the most brave individuals that people don't know the story of. So, I mean, his life for over 60 years was doing something amazing in every decade. So, if you want to say starting out, he was born in Jacksonville, Florida. He's a Morehouse man, so went to Morehouse College. And ironically, by hook and by crook, ended up in Ann Arbor. So he actually is a graduate of the University of Michigan Law School, and then went back to Florida. Uh, in those days, the students took the bar exam in the state Senate chambers, right? And there ain't no way they're going to let a black man sit and take the bar in the state Senate chambers. So they actually set up a table outside in the hallway where he took the bar, and he
In
passed
Florida.
in Florida.
Okay.
Uh,
Hold
somewhat
on, before you go any further, let's step back. Was he born poor? What was his early days? You
early
know?
days grew up in a I'd say middle class black neighborhood.
Oh, did he? Okay.
This is Jim Crow, so this is all segregated.
Yeah.
But his father was a carpenter for a railroad, and also later in his life pastored a church. His mother was a teacher, so he had some good educational inspiration,
Right.
even in an early age. What people don't realize is that in those days there was no more than a dozen or so high schools in the South for blacks. And so he was lucky enough to live in a city that had a high school. I mean, imagine that's lucky. Graduated from that, and I said went to Morehouse and then went
Right.
to the University of Michigan.
Now, it later as we move up the timeline in his career, he gets it. He passes the bar. Does he pass the
Yeah,
first
yes, indeed.
time, or did they try
Passes
to
the first time.
mess with
Nope.
him so that
He
he,
passes the first time.
yeah. So they didn't try to mess with him to say you can't get in, or did they? Is there a story like that?
No, but making somebody sit in the hall to take the bar, right, is pretty awful. But he got his degree, he reflected later in his life. Well, why didn't you fight that? He says you got to choose your battles, right? I'm not going to fight that and not become a lawyer for some of the sentiments you're
Right, right,
thinking.
right, right.
He's going to get his law degree, and he's going to make his impact when he's in a position of greater strength. But he ended up, ironically, in West Virginia. And he started the very first NAACP chapter in West Virginia. And I think it was in 1936. He switched parties, right? As you know, traditionally in the South, most African Americans were Republicans. And he very publicly switched from being Republican to being a Democrat and was campaigning for the Democratic candidate in West Virginia. And that candidate won. And the patronage doesn't know color, meant that he got a job as the first black lawyer at the Department of Labor. And so that's where his sort of
Who did he
more
campaign
formal
for?
career.
Was it on
I'm
a
forgetting the
national level?
gentleman's name.
Yeah,
So
was it a national level, or governor, or
this was
mayor,
this was for state senate or for
state senate?
the representative, the senator
Okay,
from West Virginia,
okay, I
right?
got you. Oh,
Right.
to Congress?
Yeah. So the person who campaigned for went to the Senate,
Oh, I got you. I got
and
you.
he got his job at the Department of Labor as sort of the payback for the support he gave in the race.
Okay.
All
And
right.
keep going. What happens then?
All right. So
Yeah, please.
he quickly rises in the department to hit the sort of glass ceiling. He was expressly told he's not going to get any more promotions because if he got promoted, he'd be supervising other lawyers, and they weren't going to let a black lawyer supervise a white lawyer. And so he jumped ship, and he becomes one of the very first, would be the equivalent of a administrative law judge for the Fair Employment Practices Commission,
Does he have
which
to
had
get
just
elected
recently
to that
formed.
position?
No, these were all appointed
Okay.
positions. So he became the first black lawyer at the Fair Employment Practices Commission and was traveling around the country doing investigations into discrimination in workplace. And he got to Detroit looking at a streetcar workers strike, if you can believe the days when Detroit used to have streetcars. And on his train car back, he was actually sitting across the aisle from the president of the UAW. And they started a conversation. And the UAW was looking to intentionally hire a black lawyer to do some of their inside labor work and fight discrimination inside of the union. And he offered Crockett the job, and Crockett accepted, and Crockett became the head of the Fair Employment Practices Committee inside the UAW, fighting racism inside the union.
Uh, does he ever get threatened for any of the things that he's done? Does he have any stories like that?
Oh, there's no doubt. He was quite a controversial figure throughout a lot of his life, and he got thrown out of the UAW at the time that Walter Reuther was rising to the presidency for being too liberal, right? And so the other people that got thrown out, Murray Sugar, a very famous lawyer who was the general counsel for the UAW at its formation, and Ernie Goodman, another sort of famous Detroit civil rights lawyer. So the three of them got booted out of the UAW and start
Yeah.
their own.
You say liberal, liberal how? Because we really protecting the rights of the black people, or what does liberal mean?
No, no. This has got to remember the late 1940s.
Yeah.
Liberal is slightly right of communist, right? So there was active communist presence inside the union.
Oh, really?
Crockett and Goodman were not communists, but they were sympathetic to the cause of workers' rights, and were certainly not going to purge the communists from the union. And for being too closely affiliated with those type of people, Reuther purged the union and got him out.
Okay, I got a question. If you notice, when you say they were communists, what does that mean? I like people, or I want to help people. What's the why?
No,
What did Ruth? Why did the guy want to get him out just for that? What does that mean?
okay. This will set up Crockett's next sort of major
Right, right.
sort of accomplishment. But back in those days, there was a Communist Party of the United States, right? And people were card-carrying members of the Communist Party of the United States. And it gets complicated. You start getting into the weeds. Uh, uh, there's a long history of the Communist Party, formal party, supporting African American civil rights. Right? You go back to the Scarborough Boy, and you can sort of tell those stories. And I think it was authentic. I think there was a general support. But on the hierarchy of priorities was their allegiance to the Soviet Union. And so when the Soviet Union flipped, when Germany invaded Russia, the United States Communist Party flipped, right, from being sort of very active in support of the U.S. in the Cold War because they were allies of the Soviet Union. And that kind of backflipping, what allegiance there was part of the controversy swirling around the party. But in 1948, the U.S. government arrested the entire top leadership of the Communist Party in a case that became U.S. versus Dennis. And the Communist Party wanted an integrated defense team. And the first lawyer they contacted was Charles Hamilton Houston. So the sort of godfather of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and of civil rights strategy. He did a little preliminary work with them, but was in a financial strait where he just couldn't take the financial hit of taking on that case and not having some other income generating opportunities. So Maurice Sugar, who was advising them, called up Crockett. And so you imagine Crockett's painting his dining room, and Maurice Sugar is trying to get him to accept a position on the defense team of the United States versus Dennis and represent the leadership of the Communist Party.
Wow.
And everybody would know that's just professional suicide. You know, that
Yeah,
this is
sure.
right before McCarthyism, but McCarthyism and the Red Scare is in the air. but out of principle, right? Believing that everybody deserves representation, he says yes. So he puts his own professional career at stake and heads off to New York to defend the top leadership of the Communist Party.
That propels him personally, though. I mean, as an internet or national figure, I'm sure.
Yeah, so there's no doubt that there's multiple things happening at the same time. He's getting all sorts of press, and none of it's good. So, but he is getting press. But the real, I mean, everybody knew that they would be convicted. I mean, it was really a show trial, and there was never any sort of pretext that you needed all the evidence or the evidence mattered or the jury was really going to consider the evidence. So the jury convicts the top leadership. But then the judge looks over at the defense team and says, I have some unfinished business. And after he dismisses the jury, calls them all up and sentences them to criminal contempt and a prison sentence. So for taking all of this risk, he faces 4 months in jail for criminal contempt of court. And the story, then he comes back to Detroit, helps join the first integrated law firm in the country, and is fighting the Red Scare as at the same time he's trying to fight for the appeal of that conviction, which he's unsuccessful and then ends up spending those 4 months in a federal penitentiary in Asheville, West
And that
Virginia, I
doesn't take
think.
his law license.
There's another fight about that. So at the same time he gets the criminal conviction and is fighting to appeal that, the bar's trying to steal his bar license. Right? They put that on stay until the criminal conviction is done. But the minute he steps out of federal jail, he has to fight for his license. And there's a really long struggle over him trying to keep his license, which he finally does. He doesn't get disbarred. And he does a whole lot of important representation. That whole Goodman, Crockett, Eden, and Robb firm did amazing work fighting the Red Scare when it was not popular and had substantial victories in that fight. So that's kind of George Crockett getting to the 1950s. Like I said, the 30s, 40s, 50s, every decade, this guy's doing amazing work.
Is he doing it just in Detroit, or he's on a national scale at this point? He's in
Yeah,
New
so
York.
so both Goodman and Crockett were very active in the National Lawyers Guild, right? And the National Lawyers Guild gave them a national platform. So in the 1950s, the Guild and them were fighting the Red Scare, right? 1960s, civil rights movement is in the air, right? So they start at the Guild, and the whole problem is people in the civil rights movement are being arrested, right? And they're thrown in jail, right? And they don't have any representations because there's no black lawyers in the South, and the white lawyers in the South aren't going to take any of that risk. So what the Guild does is set up a national process to recruit lawyers, black and white, from the North to go down to the South to do representation of people who are having criminal convictions as part of these civil rights demonstrations. And in summer of 1964 in Mississippi, George Crockett was in Jacksonville, Mississippi, heading the Guild office during that whole summer where the three civil rights workers were martyred. And again, people who don't know the history, one of the last people they called was George Crockett because they wanted to know what evidence they had to collect if they were going to make a civil rights case out of a church bombing in Philadelphia, Mississippi. And it was on that investigation that they were ultimately kidnapped and killed.
Hmm. So people around the country need to know this guy.
They do. Absolutely. He's an amazing. We're not even done. We're about
Yeah.
halfway
Yeah.
through
Okay.
an amazing life.
In some respects, without being Supreme Court justice, he's on the level of a Thurgood Marshall type person.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stories about the interaction between Crockett and Marshall. Some of it collaborative, some of it divisive.
Is he a tall guy, a strong, and
He's tall,
physically?
thin,
Yeah.
tall but
Oh,
thin, but but
okay.
but just
Okay.
eyes of steel. I mean, just had a backbone that was incredible. When he got down to Mississippi, getting the bond money to get people out of jail was essential because they were going to be tortured in jail, right? Go back and listen to Fannie Lou Hamer's story, what they did to her
Right.
when they arrested her.
Right.
So they had to get these people out as quick as they could. But he remembers seeing one of his first clients, and it was a white man, was coming from the north and was volunteering, and just the whipping he had had on his back. And he said, when he first got there, he was a little scared. He said, but after that, he was just angry, right? And it was that anger that sort of was the primary motivation for staying there and fighting that fight.
Um, but then as we, and I'm gonna, so we can get to the other gentleman. So as we move up, he ends up coming back to Detroit and becoming elected as a judge. Is that the
Yes,
case?
so he's elected as a judge, 1967, 6 months before the Great Rebellion. And of all the judges on Recorder's Court, he was one of the few that would not have $10,000 bond. So the prosecutor was pressuring the judges to have bond rates, which really meant you can't get out of jail, right? And Crockett, through a very clever sort of collaboration with Neighborhood Legal Services, was able to do individualized determinations of risk of the people that were before him and give bonds that were reasonable, including a number of bonds on personal recognizance that let people out that were, most likely just mass arrested. So he did that in 1967. His most famous story as a judge was in 1969. So the Republic of New Africa, which was formed the year before in Detroit, which was a black separatist group, was having their second annual convention in the basement of the New Bethel Baptist Church that was being pastored by Reverend C.L. Franklin, who is the father of Aretha Franklin. And this meeting must have been surveilled by everybody, state police, local police, CIA, FBI. This is the black separatist group in Detroit, and there's an altercation outside. Two police officers were shot. One was ultimately killed. And within minutes, to show how close the surveillance was, the church was raided with guns blazing. And it's amazing that the people weren't killed. People were hurt. But they arrested 2 years after a mass arrest caused the rebellion in 1967. They did another mass arrest and took all these people down to the first precinct downtown. And C.L. Franklin and Jimmy Del Rio, who was a state representative, at 5 a.m. in the morning are knocking on Judge Crockett's door, right, and telling him what's happened. And Crockett quickly gets dressed. He grabs a writ of habeas corpus and heads right down to the police station. And he forces them to give him a room in the police station, and he starts holding hearings under a writ of habeas corpus. And he starts releasing people who the police don't have evidence to suggest probable cause of any kind of crime. And the prosecutor comes in and tries to shut it all down, and does, and he holds the prosecutor in contempt, and then reopens the court in the afternoon and continues his habeas corpus hearings. And that was on a Saturday night, and then all hell breaks loose. All right. You would think that the headline of the story on the newspaper would be Black Separatist Group Kills White Police Officer. And the real headline was Black Judge, sets all these people free. But really, the story is Black Judge enforces the Constitution and protects the rights of people wrongly arrested.
That leads to this question, and I want to go into Damon Keith for the time factor. Uh, when you a lawyer and you go before the judge, and be a black person or white, whatnot, they have to listen to what you say. So
Yeah.
they had to listen to what he said. He had the paperwork. He said, and they can't just automatically say, "Well, just because you're a black guy, I ain't gonna do it." Am I right? Isn't there something to that effect? Because
That
they
that's
could
the
have just
norm.
said, "Hey, man, I don't care what you say. This is what we're going to do."
No, the judges have power, and local judges, district judges, trial judges have, as we're seeing in our current times, a lot of power, and the results are immediate, right? It's not this sort of 3 month appeal, 3 year appeal, but what the prosecutor did was contemptuous, right? When he tries to countermand the order of the judge, that's the definition of contempt, and it was appropriate to hold him in contempt.
So a judge said, "Hey, what you did was wrong." Even if it's a white judge, he had to stand up for what the Constitution said is the right thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. I got you. So how does he end up in his later years? I'm talking about
Yeah.
Crockett. Yeah,
Yeah, so ends up in
pass.
Congress, spends 10 years in Congress, has a lot of accomplishments there, but one of the primary was he was on the vanguard of the anti-apartheid movement and the Free Mandela movement,
Hmm.
and was, again, taking his struggle for civil rights globally then and trying to fight discrimination in South Africa.
what's some of the awards? Did he ever get like a presidential medal of
No,
something or
no.
anything, any kind of awards or
No, in the last chapter of the book, the kind of irony is sort of the absence of those honors. Although being in Congress was is an honor, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, sure. Yeah, I
I
would say
think the
that.
kind of notion that and he viewed it as such. That's kind of his vindication from the being in prison to being in Congress. So I think he would say his greatest validation was the time he spent in Congress. But the State Bar Association gave him their highest award in 1995. And I think he just again he loved irony, right? The irony of the group that was trying to disbar him, right, in
Right.
the 1950s is now honoring him with their top prize.
Now, the other gentleman that you want to speak about is Judge Damon Keith. Now, I did know him. What's his story? How did he grow up? And
Yeah,
let's do a similar thing with him that we did with Crockett, as you
absolutely.
can.
Born on the 4th of July in 1922, right, and kind of celebrated that kind of again irony that. A country that wasn't protecting people's rights and living up to the independence degree. But he claimed that day as his day. Born in Detroit, educated in Detroit, goes to college at West Virginia State College, which then was a historical black college, and had that stern talk from his parents about when he gets across the Mason-Dixon line, he's got to get off the train and get to the back of the bus or back of the train and not to fight. But he said being at West Virginia State College was liberating because he had all the black luminaries coming through, and was able to meet all these heroes. And he said it was like the cataracts falling off of his eyes to see these amazing black leaders, and that was really transformative for him.
Let me stop you
Um,
there. Who could that have been? As you might think, who were some of those at that time?
Yeah, that
I
would
know.
be Adam Clayton Powell, right?
Oh, I
That would
see.
be,
I see.
just the whole litany of folks that would have been in the early 1940s,
I see.
being leaders of the Black
Okay.
civil rights movement.
I see.
Maybe James Weldon Johnson, sort of the folks that would go to a historical black college to give a speech or to be honored or receive an honorary doctorate.
I see.
So he was able to be exposed personally to just that range of leadership, and really be inspired by that, and that stuck with him his whole life. Um, but then serves in the war in a segregated army. And in the Keith Center, it was very important to him to have that picture of him serving in a segregated army to remind the law students that it wasn't that long ago, right? That we had those segregated
What
institutions.
was that?
World War II. So he would have
Okay.
been there. 1943 is when he uh, served. Only served one term. They wanted him to reenlist. He says, "No way in hell I'm going to reenlist in this racist institution." Um, Comes back to Detroit, but then under the GI Bill. So I mean, there are benefits from this. Is able to get a law degree from Howard Law School, which is sort of the civil rights capital for law, and that's where Thurgood Marshall he met
Right.
going back then, and he was able to watch Thurgood Marshall practice moot court arguments in front of the black law students. And then, a day or two later, go to the Supreme Court and give the argument. Then comes back to Detroit. And this is something the judge was not at all ashamed of. Passed the bar in a second time. Didn't pass the bar on the first time, but did pass the bar. Had a very active practice. Founded, to talk about black business, founded a very successful black law firm. Became the first co-chair in 1963 of the Michigan State Civil Rights Commission, with John Fikens being the other chair. And then in 1967, he's appointed by Lyndon Baines Johnson to a district court judge in the Eastern District of Michigan,
Let me stop you
federal
there.
court.
Now, how does Johnson know about him to appoint him? I mean, because
Yeah.
he's yeah. That's the question.
Yeah, so in those days, even more so than now, senators really chose the judges. So he had and Judge Keith was very, very active in Democratic politics. So he was incredibly well connected, and had a very good relationship with Senator Phil Hart. And it was Senator Phil Hart that put his name in front of the president. And in those days, basically, the president did what the senators of that state told him to do in terms of judicial appointments.
Okay, I got you. Okay,
So.
Yeah. So keep going as
Yeah, so gets on the court in 1967. I'm going to focus on the Nixon tapes case because that really resonates with the history that's going on in the present moment. So there was a group called the White Panthers in Ann Arbor, and they were accused of setting off a couple of bombs of CIA related facilities, and they were being arrested. And the prosecutors wanted to introduce wiretap tapes of conversations of the White Panthers, but they didn't have a warrant before they did the tapes. And Judge Keith said, the Fourth Amendment says what the Fourth Amendment says, and was going to exclude the evidence because they didn't have a warrant. So in a very unusual move, typically you appeal that, right? There's an unusual thing in law called a writ of mandamus, where the judge actually was being sued. Right, so the judge now becomes the defendant. It's United States versus United States District Court, and he has to get his own legal representation. So rather than a normal appeal, he's now having to fight for the correctness of his decision, right? And goes in front of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court
the
unanimously
U.S.
said, "You're
Supreme
right."
Court.
U.S. Supreme Court, right? And the case was really known for saying nobody is above the law, not even the president, right? And you can't circumvent the legal system. You have to follow the legal system. And even more sort of timely, the argument the government was making was national security, saying that this is a national security concern. You little judge can't second guess the executive office on a national security concern. And Judge Keith said, no, the law means what the law says. And he would later say, when he finally was able to listen to the tapes, there was nothing about national security. So that whole sort of claim about this being national security was just a pretext, was a lie. We would call things as the right name. The lawyer would say pretext, a real person would say a lie. That they were lying to him about national security in trying to prevent the judges from exercising control over the executive.
Well, when as a judge, he's got to he he's got to be afraid for himself. I think that he makes the decision that the powers that be don't want him to make. Is that the
Yeah.
case?
There's certainly some concern there, but he, in different periods and different cases, was getting death threats. I mean, he had a stack of, there were telegrams of back then, right? Nobody had text messages, but he would get stacks of text or telegrams threatening his life, right? So a lot of death threats, and then the FBI on the Pontiac busing case, sort of making patrols around his house to try to keep him safe, and the federal marshals. So there were numerous times during his time on the bench where his life had been threatened.
But you stand on principle.
People like, as I said, people sometimes ask me, well, what was special about Judge Keith? And one of the ways I answer that is it's easy to know. It's actually not too hard to know what the right thing to do is, right? Most of us know what the right thing to do is. It's much harder to do the right thing, right? So it was really the courage that he had to do the right thing consistently that made him a great judge.
He ends up. We got enough time. Tell us about, as you may, another one of the cases that he made a, I don't know if you want to say controversial, but the right decision otherwise.
Yeah,
So yeah,
the right thing is always controversial, so
yeah, right,
there's
right.
no difference. So I'll sort of tick off a couple of them. There's the Hamtramck case, and Hamtramck, for those that don't know the geography, is really a city inside the city of Detroit, and they were practicing what at that time was known as Negro removal. So they were using economic development or redevelopment, really in a targeted way to get rid of the black community that was not very big. And the judge found intentional discrimination. And rather than just charging them a fine, he ordered them to buy new housing, create new housing, and bring the people back. Right. And he sat on that case for the rest of his career. And it was really just last year, right? This is now 50 some years later, that the last house was made. And now you're talking about the kids of the plaintiffs in that case having the housing that was taken from them. And this was his tenacity. First, that you don't just discrimination is not a parking ticket, right? Discrimination is don't pay a fine. He was making sure that their rights were protected in a very literal and concrete way. And then he stayed with that case the rest of his life, which is just an amazing tribute. There's the DTE energy case for employment discrimination. At DTE at that time, if you wanted a job, you would be interviewed. And then for African American candidates, they would actually put a black dot on the application top, so they knew exactly that it was a black candidate, and you wouldn't get the job, right? And that was just sort of the discrimination of DET at that time was just known by everybody in the black community. So what the judge did, in addition to finding discrimination and awarding damages and compensation for those people who had been discriminated against, he actually said it's not just the people who were not hired, it's the people who didn't even apply because they knew of the discrimination, right? So he was always pushing the boundary, particularly on the remedy side, to see that justice was done. And the last one I'll talk about, sort of finish, is the Pontiac busing case I had alluded to earlier. He found discrimination in Pontiac was the first time in the North that a judge had found intentional discrimination and ordered integration and a remedy. So just, case after case. And these were getting national attention. These were just sort of Michigan cases. These were getting national attentions. And there's a documentary called Walk With Me. You'll see Walter Cronkite, talking about Judge Keith's decision
Is
in
that
these cases.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's go back. As I'm not a lawyer, maybe some other people, somebody had to bring the case to the judge, though. He can't take
Yeah.
the case up himself.
No, you've got to have good plaintiff lawyers as well. And so the Pontiac busing case was brought by the local chapter of the NAACP. The DTE case was brought by employees who believed that they had been discriminated against and was made into a class action. So you're right. You take the cases that come to you, right? So one of the just sort of points of fate is that big cases found Judge Keith. He didn't go out looking for them.
Yeah, I was going to
They
ask you
appeared
that.
on his desk.
If I'm the defense, I'm gonna say don't give it to Keith. Don't give it to Keith. Isn't that
You don't
right?
have that
I mean,
choice
I'm sure
either.
they tried it.
Yeah. No, so they practice what they call a random draw, that it really is randomly selected, that this case goes to that judge. So you don't have that kind of manipulation, or at least in theory.
Yeah. Uh, but uh, could he step in on a case that did come before him? Is there
Nope.
such a thing as that? Like, hey, man, that's my buddy over here. I know he
Nope.
racist, the judge is, and I want to do something about that.
Yeah. No, the parties can move to disqualify, right? If they believe that there's a legitimate reason a
I
judge is
got you.
not impartial, they can be
I got you.
disqualified. But no judge can step into a case that's being controlled by another judge. Now, President Carter then elevates him to the Sixth Circuit. So he goes from a district court judge to an appellate court judge, and the appellate court judges take the appeals that come out of the district courts. But even
Okay,
that's on
let's
a
stop
random
there.
draw.
Let's stop there. No disrespect. Give me an idea of the level of how it goes on court.
Yeah.
You got municipal, you got
Yeah.
how's that?
So
What's the level?
first difference, you have state court and federal courts, and completely separate, right?
All right.
So Judge Crockett was a state court judge, recorder's court judge, hearing all felonies coming out of the city of Detroit, right? And then in that case, it would go to the Michigan Court of Appeals. That would be the Michigan Supreme Court if there was to be an appeal of one of his decisions. Federal court, and Judge Keith was a federal court judge, starts at the district court or the trial court level, then goes to an intermediate appellate court level where you have a three-judge panel typically hearing the appeal, and then it goes from the appellate court to the U.S. Supreme Court.
And he was at what level?
He was at the appellate court level at the last part of his career. Started district court level, then gets elevated to the appellate court. And there's a funny Thurgood Marshall story about that. So Judge Keith was just rocking as a district court judge and making national changes. So there's a lot of pressure put on him by local lawyers to not be elevated, to stay as a district court judge. And he gets one of his law clerks come in to his office and says, Judge Thurgood's on the phone. All right. And so he picks up the phone and says, Thurgood. And Justice Marshall says, Damon, he said, what's this I hear that you're thinking about not accepting an appointment at the Court of Appeals if you get it? He says, if you get that offer, you take it. Boom. Slams the phone down.
Mm.
So.
Yeah, so he took it, evidently.
He took it. And he continued to do great work and have a national impact at the appellate level.
But what they're saying is, as we almost come to a close, the higher up you go, the less you can affect on the lower level. Is that sort of like that?
Some of that feeling, but you can still have great impact, but it's typically removed, right? It could be years removed. You could be removed from geography, where the power of the district court judges, you're ruling in the minute, and that ruling has an immediate effect. right?
Right.
So that kind of is a very different sense of judging and a very different sense of authority. And in some ways, it's a different kind of power. Judge Crockett would say he missed being a district court judge, right? And being in Congress, he was just driving him crazy. He was just because that talk about being removed, right?
Yeah, I got
You're
you.
removed from everything.
Yeah,
And he really missed the days that he was that trial court judge, being able to make decisions that had an impact in the moment.
yeah. What was Keith ever? And I think I might have heard this. Was he ever talked about for Supreme Court?
Yeah. And again, these are sort of, you know, these are discussions that are hard to document. But the Michigan senator at that time was pushing hard when an opening came up to try to get him on. But so are senators from all over the country. So I mean, there's a lot of people I think were being pushed. But his name was certainly in the talking. But he never got the appointment.
Because if you might equate the time that they were talking, who might have got that appointment? Who can we say he should have got it? Other not he should have
I'd
got
have
it.
to go back on my notes,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
good question, and I'll do my homework and
yeah.
I'll come
Because
back
we're
with an
talking
answer to
about
that.
what time frame towards the end of his career.
Yeah, this would have had to have been either in the Carter years or the Clinton years because there's no
Okay, I got
Republican
you.
that would
I
take
got
that.
you. Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
also sort of a victim of the age. By the time you had a really strong Democratic presence in the presidency, he's just a little bit too old to be that real young appointment that increasingly people want to see.
Yeah, I got you. I remember seeing him at Tabernacle Church. He was very involved at Tabernacle,
Yeah.
deacon and the whole shot.
No,
Uh,
very,
what?
very, very religious person, very much a man of faith.
Yeah.
He would start his day with the Book of Psalms. So he'd get into his chambers, he would shut the door to his office. He would read the Psalms and he would meditate on them before he started his workday.
What was Crockett also religious in
More
some respect?
complicated. Yeah, not in the same way.
Okay.
And you know, you, you can't be a politician in Detroit if you're not in the black church. So he was definitely present, but I don't think it was as important in his personal life
Yeah, I got you.
as is was for Judge Keith.
As we come to close, if what would you like to say that people know about Crockett? That he, I mean, what was if he what could have been his highest level that he did not attain for one reason or another? Was there another level for Crockett? And I'm asked the same thing for Keith.
Yeah. So for Crockett, he said explicitly that representing the communists in the United States versus Dennis put his career back at least 10 years. Right. So
Oh man,
he was on that rocket ship of, best lawyer or top lawyer at the Department of Labor, top lawyer at the UAW, was on a pretty sharp trajectory. And then when he accepted that case, I told you, professional suicide, that's just
did he
so
wish he had done that?
no, that's not the person he was. He never second guessed that, and if he had to go back and do it again, he'd do it again. He's
Really?
just that was he. He is one of the most courageous people I've ever been exposed to at that kind of level. Just such courage, such a backbone, and such strong conviction. But that's why I said Congress was important. Congress was sort of that honor and that kind of recognition that he knew he deserved and was denied because of the hard choices he was making to do the right thing.
And then the same for Keith. Or is there something more that Keith could have
Yeah,
gotten?
I wouldn't say so. I really think that
Yeah,
he loved being a judge, right?
yeah.
He was on the bench for 52 years. He was working the Thursday
Oh,
before the Sunday he passed. So he loved his life. I think everybody might sort of aspire maybe the Supreme Court, but
yeah.
he had an amazing life. He loved Detroit. So I mean that would have been taking him out of his home. So I would actually say that Judge Keith had the life he dreamed of and enjoyed it, right? Which some people don't do, and leaves a legacy of being a judge who hired more women and clerks of color than any judge in history, right? So he has
Mm,
this huge legacy and huge family of Keith clerks that supported him, nurtured him long after they left the courthouse.
I see. One more question. When Detroit is not On well, it is. I mean, this is the question on the national radar. If what is it bigger to be in Washington to be a judge, or you know what I mean, because it's a national scale, or just because you're not in Washington, you're in Detroit, they all know you and revere you.
Yeah, so I mean, Judge Keith had a national reputation, particularly amongst judges. And there's an honor. It's called the Devitt Award. The judges vote on, federal judges vote on, to honor a federal judge. And he was a recipient of the Devitt Award.
Okay,
Um, Now, there's no doubt the Supreme Court's the highest and most important court of the land.
right,
There's no doubt that the district court or the Court of Appeals in D.C. Is powerful, particularly as it relates to the exercise of regulatory authority and
right,
federal power,
right.
because they're getting so many of those cases. But appellate courts are pretty powerful. They hear all the important cases that come out of a half dozen states.
I got you. You have the copy of the Damon Keith book that you can
I
show us.
I could not find that one, but it's
Couldn't
called
find it,
Crusader for Justice.
but you
But
found
I
the
do
other
have
one.
a copy of the Crockett book, so No
Okay,
Equal Justice.
no
So
equal
that's
judge. Why did you? Why did y'all title it there? Title it
the
that.
the yeah. So there's a long sort of speech that Crockett gave, where he was being incredibly critical about how discriminatory justice was in the United States, for African Americans and for poor people. He said that, it's the size of your wallet or the color of your skin that determines your access to justice. So that kind of notion of there being no equal justice was his condemnation of the legal system that he was working within often and trying to change.
Last question: when you write a book like this, either one of them, how do you write it? I mean, you have to go through newspaper clippings. What research do you do? So
Yeah, so I mean,
put out
we
the
were blessed,
tips.
when we did the biography of Judge Keith. Judge Keith was with us, so there's a lot of interview. So just spending time interviewing him, certainly going through archives, his papers, his records, newspaper stories, interviewing other people, is part of that process. So you look at multiple different sets of sources. As I said in the beginning, we were lucky enough that Ed Littlejohn, my co-author on the Crockett book, started that project in the 1990s, early 1990s, and was able to do extensive interviews of both Judge Crockett and of Ernie Goodman. But then Judge Crockett left his papers to Ed Littlejohn. So Ed Littlejohn and we had the benefit of all of Crockett's papers, and he was a scrapbooker, right? So we had his scrapbooks of newspaper articles, with some margin notes for his entire time as a recorder's court judge in Detroit.
Last question: what would you want people to get out of either one of those books?
That we don't have as many giants as we used to, right? That these really were legal
Really?
giants, civic giants, and it's kind of sad that they come almost from another era. But they were both incredible men of principle. They both had that courage that I talked about. They not only knew what the right thing was, they did the right thing, often at times of great personal sacrifice.
I love it. Do you have a website? How do people get your books?
Uh, 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 Both books are published by Wayne Press. So if you go to Wayne State University Press, you can find both books.
Okay.
You can go to the Keith Center website to see the work that we're doing in the Keith Center to carry on Judge Keith's legacy. And so if you just Google Keith Center for Civil Rights, you can see all the good work we're doing today.
Oh, excellent. I thank you so very much for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure,
You've
Anthony.
done it eloquently for sure. And is there a question I have not asked you? I always do that with
Oh,
people. Anything
you're
that
doing
comes to
great.
mind? And
We did the arcs of two amazing lives in one
yeah,
hour, so
yeah.
that's impressive.
Okay. Well, thank you so very much for that, everybody. This is what we do: is strong inspirations, where I give it to you straight, no chaser, to intoxicate your mind through the people who come on here, and then they tell it because they know it. And as he's written these books about these two people from Spokane, Washington. And so I got to come on you. This is pretty good for you to being who you are to want to write about these people.
Yeah, no, it's an honor to write about these giants.
Yeah. I thank you for doing this. And this is beautiful. And so everybody again, this is go to the University Wayne State University Press. I suspect they're on Amazon too, probably, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get either book. Both of them will be written up in the description, so you know what's the Damon Keith book name?
Crusader for Justice.
Crusader for Justice. Okay. No Equal Justice and Crusader for Justice are two best-selling books of two icons out of my hometown, Detroit. And so I thank you so very much for coming. Oh, everybody go to my website, businessintheblack.net. And I thank you so very much for coming on the show. And to you, I say this, and I mean this with all sincerity. I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. I love who you've become. You got a
Thank you, sir.
PhD, a MD, you got all them D's and letters and everything. You like reading, and you're a compassionate person. That
I
comes
appreciate
through.
that.
And all the work that you're doing with the center, because y'all have a lot of activities here in Detroit. Yeah, when if you ever come to Detroit, please go by the building. Is there a museum or something there? People
Uh,
open for
there's a
public
permanent
people walk through?
version. Judge Keith really wanted there's a permanent version of Marching Towards Justice, which tells the story of the 14th Amendment at the center.
Oh man. So people can come in just during normal business hours and see
Yep.
this exhibit.
Yep.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I have not done that. I'm gonna get people to go meet me there and do that. I want to be there.
You're
So,
welcome.
yeah, thank you so very much. I'll stay in touch. With that, I'll say bye bye. We out. Thank you.
Take care, sir.
Yeah. Bye bye.